Hey, it's Charlie Craven from Charlie's Flybox, and today I'm going to tie for you kind of a cool pattern from Ken Morrish. Let me get a hold of him here. Um, Called a Mayday. I'll give you a little view of this guy. This is sort of a cripply little emerger pattern. Sort of half done, DUN. Hatching hackle stacker style pattern. That's just sort of you can see sort of ragtag, shaggy mayfly adult imitation that's put together pretty craftily. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tie this on a new hook from Umpqua, and it's in their X series, and it's an XC110BL. If I hold that up just right for you, go that way. And this is a barbless Japanese steel dry fly hook, and it's got a long needle point on it, and I can tell you, it is crazy sharp. You can see my finger catches on that. That's a sharp hook. I'm impressed. So I'm going to use some 14-aught Veevus in just this gray color, and I'm going to start this thread just up here a couple eye lengths behind the hook eye. And for the shuck, I'm going to use, you can use McFlylon, but instead of McFlylon these days, I use this Macrame yarn. And this is the smoke-colored Macrame yarn. And I'm going to take a thin strand of this, not very many strands. I probably got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10, something like that. And I'm going to tie this clump in, and I'm going to wrap back over it to the bend. And I want to keep that right on top of the hook. And that's going to become our tail / shuck. And Ken does this kind of cool. He'll leave this kind of long. And because both of these materials are sort of ragged, you can kind of let that be a tail or a shuck, and let the fish decide which one they want that to be, which I think is a good idea. Now for the body on this, I'm going to use some relatively new dubbing. This is new to me anyway. This is Hare's Mask dubbing. Get this up here from Nature's Spirit, and what this is Hare's Mask, rabbit fur, and antron. Let me get a little pinch of it. And this is the closest thing to regular Hare's Mask off a hide. Or off a mask that I've found. It's just got just the right amount of antron in it to make a nice shaggy blend, but it's soft and it dubs really nicely. I'm going to use the brown olive in this case, but obviously you can tie this in whatever color you like. But I'm going to take a little pinch of this, and you can see it's got some bigger guard hairs in it, and I'm going to twist this down pretty tightly on the thread to make a mayfly body. So fairly thin application. And I'm going to use this to build my abdomen here. So I'm going to burn up that bare thread, and I'll start this back here at the base of the tail, and then come forward and just make a skinny abdomen. Just a slight taper to it as I get toward the front, right up to where I started the thread again. You can see I can kind of pile it up there. And I like that it's shaggy like that. This was originally tied with a buggy nymph dubbing that's hard to get anymore, but I think this dubbing is actually better. And I'm going to bring my thread back to about the 60% point on the hook. And this is where we're going to tie in our wing. So I'm going to take a clump of that same macrame yarn. And I don't need a giant clump here either. You'll see the way we create the wing. This is going to become the base for our hackle stacker hackle. But it's also going to be folded back and become the wing. So we don't need very much of it here. And I'm going to tie that in right on top of the dubbing. You can see I've overlapped on top of that front edge of that thorax. And you can even creep back maybe 45, 55 there, where I've got that tied in. Now one thing I like to do sort of in prep for hackle stackers is I'll get a couple parachute wraps around the base of the wing just to help align it and kind of group that bunch together. And then I'm going to take my hackle feather. And what I want for this is, I've got a size 16 hook here. I want a somewhat oversized hackle. You can see, at least 1.5 hook gaps, if not even 2. And again, you can use whatever color you like here. I'm going to strip the butt end. And when I tie this in, I'm going to tie it into the hook shank right at the base of the wing, tie that stem down, and I've got it tied in with the outside of the feather up. We're going to wrap essentially a parachute style hackle for this hackle stacker. But what we want to do is sort of tie it backwards. We want these fibers to slope back. Now, one of the tricks to getting this wrapped that I've found makes this job a little easier is I'm going to take this wing and I'm going to clip it in my hackle pliers. I'll get them down here where you can see them. I'm just going to grab a hold of that wing with my hackle pliers, and then I can hold onto it with my finger and hold that wing taut. I've actually got a little more than I need there. And now I'm going to pick up this feather and I'm going to start to wrap, and I'm going to wrap up the base of this wing. And you can see as you do this, it sort of gets all disheveled, which is the very idea of a hackle stacker. And I want to wrap enough distance. When I pull that forward, you can see that's not quite up to the hook eye. Give you that angle. I want that just short of the hook eye there when I pull that forward. And then I'll wrap right back down through it. And I like to make these fairly heavily hackled. You can see that what we're going to do here with the hackle stacker move, when we're all said and done, is we're going to have a pretty brushy hackle, but it's going to be parted and sort of tied in on top. So now I can take my hackle pliers off of there and sort of sweep everything back and tie the base of that feather off. And you'll catch some of your hackle fibers. Not a big deal. That's one of the cool things about this method, is you've got room to cover anything. And it does come out, the fly does come out ratty. It's pretty cripply looking. And that's sort of the whole idea. I'm going to try to get those extra fibers out of the way. And then I'll kind of push that hackle down and slide that back. So we've got our hackle wrapped in there. We've tied it off to the hook shank rather than to the post, as it were. Now I'm going to take a little bit more of that dubbing. I'm going to twist that on my thread. And again, most of our bulk is already built in there, so you don't need very much. And I'll hold that hackle back out of the way, and I'm going to dub my thorax here. You can see I've still got an index point, about an eye length, maybe a little bit more even, of bare space behind the hook eye. We're going to need that for our wing. And I'm going to dub that thorax right up to the base of the wing and forward again. And I like it a little bit more round. I'm going to end with some bare thread just right up there behind the hook eye, like so. So what we've got is that sort of randomly, one giant long guard here there, random hackle stacker hackle there. Now what I want to do is I'm going to hold that wing tight and I'm going to part that hackle. You can see I can slide it all to the back. This sort of reminds me of folding a wet fly hackle. That's basically what I'm going to do there. I'm going to fold that forward and catch the base of that wing and then draw that down tight. And that pulls that hackle over the top of the thorax and get that anchored down with a few turns. So what we've got is that hackle all across the top of the fly, but not across the bottom, sort of a thorax style. And it just spreads out in a nice radius around the fly. You can see it makes a nice sort of ragged appearance, but with a lot of surface area, so a good floating fly. I've got a few that are going to fight with me for my wing here. So any of those hackle fibers that are sticking out, I'll usually try to trim out ahead of time. Now what I'm going to do is I've got my thread at the front of that index point. I'm going to bring it to the back, a couple turns backwards. And I'm going to fold the wing back and I'm going to make a loop like so. And I'll tie that down at the back of that index point. Might take a couple turns like so. I can see I'm getting off the screen here, so I'm going to lower this down just a bit. Get our focus back. There we go. Now what I'll do is I'm going to bring my thread to the front of that index point and fold that last remaining stub back again and catch it with a couple turns. So we've got 3 layers in that wing. There's one of those fibers I was fighting with is still in there. We're going to get him out. Then I'll come in and whip finish. So I'm going to come in and whip finish that little nub head there. And you can see that tie down for the 3 pieces of the wing is sort of staggered. Now I'll come in and put my scissors in the loop, and I can open that loop up and then shape the wing just a bit longer than the hackle, like so. Trim this bottom up just a little bit. You can see we've got a big wide wing profile out of this. Nice, easy to see fly. Lots of surface area. And then one last thing that I always do to these is I'm going to take with some vinyl cement. This is Flex Seal. I'll put a little drop on either side. I'll let that bleed up in the base of the wing. And that will make the wing a little bit more rigid there along its base, and I can kind of shape it into a single plane like a sail. And you can shape this wing as much as you like to. I try not to do too much of it because I do sort of like the disheveled look of it. You can kind of see here, if I give you a better focus, kind of the three different clumps of the wing fibers that create that wide wing profile. And that Hackle Stacker Hackle gives us, let's bring this up. And I'm going to swing him back a little bit here. You can see the profile of that hackle from the bottom. Gives us lots of surface area, but a nice clear view, almost like a floating nymph or a hatching bug. I like flies like this. I'm kind of getting more into this disheveled look stuff. It's just a little ratty, and I can definitely see maybe doing this fly with an olive brown abdomen and a yellow thorax for a PMD. Any variety of combinations like this. But this is sort of a, while it seems so hatch specific, this is sort of a fly that you could use in very specific hatches, or you could use as a general searching pattern. I mean, that just looks like food. I like it. I like it. I'm trying not to say that it's a really cool little fly, but man, it is. I hope you guys like it. That's Kenny Morrish's Mayday. The Mayday from Kenny Morrish. Yeah, well, I like it. I'm going to tie up a few more of those for my box. That just reminds me I probably need some more of those. You do too. You should tie some up as well. Thanks for watching. I'm Charlie Craven. You guys have a good day.